Hello and welcome to the Federal. After months of rising tensions, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met in South Korea for their first in person talks since Trump's return to the White House during his second term. The meeting ended with tariff rollbacks, trade assurances, and fresh geopolitical messaging. But what does it really signal for the global order? In this episode of Early Wise, I'll be discussing this hot topic with the Federal's consulting editor, K.S. Dakshinamurthy, who follows international affairs closely. Thank you for joining me, sir. My first question is the meeting's location. South Korea was unusual for a US China summit. Uh, is Actually, it signals a possible shift in diplomatic theater. So, what message does the Trump and Z meeting in South Korea send to regional players like Japan, Taiwan, and North Korea?
Yeah, the meaning of the summit being in Busan in South Korea is interesting in the sense that what it fundamentally shows is that both of them, both Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, wanted to meet at the first opportunity because the situation between the tensions between the two countries were increasing, number one, as you said. But secondly, there were hardcore, realistic problems which needed to be attended to immediately from both the US point of view and from the Chinese point of view. And Busan was it came up as a very good opportunity because in the Pacific theater, it's also a very crucial nation, that is South Korea. And Trump, for the first time, in fact, is making such a long trip after his second term, after he's come to the office for the second time. And for even for G, this area continues to be very critical. So Busan, in that sense, kind of neatly fitted into the overall uh, geopolitical situation at this point. For example, let me tell you. For instance, Trump had two big issues. One was the issue about the soybean, which had been stopped. The imports from the US had been stopped by China, which was affecting US farmers because at least 25% of the produce, the soybean produce is from the US is actually purchased by China. That is now the first thing. Second is the rare earths issue, and China had imposed serious restrictions on the export of rare earths to the US, and which is very crucial. So that was the other thing. So it was very important, and at the same time, for China, the tech exports from the US was under severe restriction, which means that it directly affected the performance or the conduct of Chinese companies, tech companies, and this we are talking of really high-end stuff. So both were actually at each other's throat. Plus, of course, the tariffs were always there, and Trump kept on threatening to increase the tariffs, and then China, again was trying to take on Trump by threatening even more tariffs. So, so all these kind of tensions and kind of misunderstandings, etc., in a sense, was the kind of catalyst that made both the countries meet, or both the leaders meet at the first opportunity. And I think Busan gave them the right opportunity to meet, and so that's why you have the meeting there.
Okay. So Trump, as you said, announced a 10% cut in tariffs on Chinese imports and called it an amazing meeting. So do you see this as a genuine reset in US-China trade relations or a tactical move by Trump to ease global markets ahead of 2026?
Trump's, bombastic way of talking, one, already knows, the world knows the way he speaks. He talks only in superlatives, in hyperbole. So we should discount much of what he says and then look at the concrete steps that he has taken. For instance, there is a feeling that the 10% reduction in tariff is really not that much. The Chinese government and Chinese officials were expecting the tariffs to be brought down to at least around 30%. So in that sense, it's not such a great reduction. And of course, probably the bigger issue was fentanyl. The precursor chemicals which China exports to the US. So that was brought down by 10%. So it's a what Trump has basically done is he's managed to kind of at least show an attitude, or show the Chinese that he means business and he wants some kind of a detente, or a kind of a peace, a more of a peaceful resolution, in the kind of friction that both the countries are experiencing now. So in that sense, yes. And then as far as Xi is concerned, he was more realistic. He said that there will be differences between the two countries because the mindset, the history, and the way the way China views the world and the way the Americans view the world are very different. So we'll have to work through the differences. So Xi was far more pragmatic, but at the same time, his response to Trump was also positive overall. So basically, it paved the way for further talks and conversations. For instance, Trump has said he's going to visit China next April, and soon after that, Xi is going to the US for a return visit. So all these are now planned. So it basically means that the talks have taken the issues in some ways towards some kind of a resolution, though it's not as amazing as what Trump is projecting it to be.
So analysts also note that the agreement lacks detail on enforcement and uh, uh, you know uh, how it could unravel under domestic pressure in both countries. So how sustainable is this deal in the face of US internal politics and China's economic situation? Is it more symbolic than structural?
Um, as I said, it's a starting point. See, the point is that if you look at the one concrete step, for instance, is the reduction of tariff from 57% to 47%. In fact, that makes the Chinese tariff lesser than that of India, because India is paying 50% tariff on its exports to the US. So that's one thing. So there has been a substantial, or concrete steps that have been taken. It's not just been rhetoric or empty words. So in that sense, both realize that they need each other. In fact, I would like to, a takeaway from this question is the comparison between the US and India and the US and China. So you get to see how between China and the US, there is more of an equal footing. There is a give and take. There's a concrete give and take. China gives in some things, the US gives in something, and there is a kind of a understanding and a kind of a compromise on both sides, which is very much unlike what is happening, say, between India and the US. In the case of India, India is, I mean, being arm twisted by Trump to, for instance, stop imports, oil imports from Russia. And even the trade deal, there are some very long-standing sticking points which they are hoping to force India to give in. We don't know the details because it hasn't been decided as yet, but talks are on. So what you overall see is that uh, Trump is far more circumspect with China than the way he deals with India. So this is something that we need to look at. It's very important. Also, it also goes to show where a nation stands as far as the world is concerned. And in that sense, what you see between Trump and China is far more equitable. There is a give and take. China has agreed to open up or resume its exports of rare earth material. And Trump has said, fine, we will reduce the tariff on fentanyl. And also, China has agreed to take soybeans from the US. So there is a concrete give and take. And also, please notice that, you know, the atmospherics, so it seems to be more equitable in that sense.
Okay. Beyond trade, both leaders briefly referenced global security and supply chain resilience during their talk. So, could this meeting mark the start of a broader US China thaw, or are we simply seeing a temporary pause in a long term rivalry? How do you see this?
See, the rivalry between China and the US is going to continue because fundamentally they are rivals. So the rivalry will continue. Now, what is important for the rest of the world is that they do it peaceably. They understand each other's compulsions, and which is what has happened. For instance, if you take the Asia Pacific, if you take the tensions, say, between China and Japan or China and the Philippines, and Taiwan. So you have the US playing a huge role in all this, and say something like South Korea or Japan are key allies of the US. At the same time, China is also trying to increase its role in Asia Pacific, which is being thwarted by the US. So it's going to continue. And very recently, Japan now has a conservative leader of who belongs to the Liberal Party there, Liberal Democratic Party. So, which means that it's more tensions that can actually commence between Japan and China. So the US is going to play again. It's going to be playing a bigger role there. So in that sense, yes, the what this the optics of this meeting suggests is that both don't want to increase the tension. They both are working towards reducing it, and which is a good sign. I mean, it's a definitely something positive. So it is going to, in that sense, have a ripple effect. For instance, South Korea wanted Trump to meet Kim, the North Korean leader. So in that sense, there is an attempt for rapprochement, and then reduce tension. So in that sense, overall, it's a definitely a good sign.
My last question to you is, will this meeting have any impact on the Russia-Ukraine war?
Yeah, I mean, it's a something that has not been talked about too much, though Trump indicated that they did discuss the Ukraine war and in great detail, but very few, of course, it's just a few hours since they had this meeting, and we will be seeing more, what actually transpired, hopefully in the next few hours or maybe a few days. But definitely the Russia-Ukraine war and China's relationship with Russia and the US backing Ukraine, it is going to, this meeting is going to have an impact. I don't know what they have decided, because, see, Russia is backed by China, but maybe not in that overt, open fashion like the way the US is backing Ukraine. But China is a kind of a backbone today for Russia, and it also gives it moral support. In fact, there are reports which say that China is helping them even, in servicing their military equipment, and also even probably supplying spare part. We don't know. So these are the kind of reports. But definitely, China is standing by Russia, and the US is, of course, definitely with the Ukraine. If the one interesting thing you will notice is that Russia, I mean, Trump has not forced China to stop importing oil from Russia, like the way Trump did with India. So, I mean, I find that a very interesting difference, because China is the biggest, actually, the importer from Russia, followed by India. So, in that sense, one would have naturally expected Trump to have put pressure on China to stop importing oil, but he has not done that. So, it obviously means that Trump has his own yardsticks, the way he deals with the other countries. So definitely there must have been some kind of an understanding. If, hypothetically speaking, China and the US decide that this war must end and we both should work together, definitely it will have an impact on this war, and it probably conclude faster than what it looks like today.
Thank you for your insights, sir.